How real is mobile TV? And how far are we away from a mass model where I can pick up my phone and I can actually look and see that I'm actually talking to you now, we're live?
Well, the honest answer right now is it's real. It's here, it's available. You can pick it up on 2 devices in the country from Multichoice and no devices from the new trial that's out there. So the system works, it's available, you can use it. The big question is, will it be viable in South Africa? Will it gain any market traction? And will we actually, as you say, just be able to pick up your TV and watch what you want to watch? The honest truth is it's early days. It hasn't really taken off in any huge way anywhere in the world. People tend to actually use the internet as their news gathering and clip watching and update service. And that's happening more and more on their phone. But a streaming service, which this TV is, which is very different. I think you've got to understand there's a big difference between 3G streaming internet TV and this type of TV. This is normal broadcast TV. It's just digital, and it's one to many, many devices out there. There's not very much interactivity involved.
Yeah.
So it's probably not going to be huge, but it's a great, I think, great training ground for these companies to do all sorts of other things.
Yeah. Before you came, I was telling Kobe that I like my TV big, and I look at this big screen here, like what we have here in the studio, and that's my screen. The bigger, the better. Kobe just mentioned size does matter in these matters.
The big thing is you've got to understand consumer behavior. In many ways, you're not going to watch the, soccer or any form of sport or a movie for that matter on a mobile TV.
Device, yeah.
What you might do if you're commuting, and there is a commuter culture in this country, and hopefully with the Gautrain coming, there'll be more of a commuter culture, is catch up on either TV shows or sport or news or things that you maybe missed. The big key will be on demand, and this current technology doesn't offer on demand. So
just explain that term, on demand.
Essentially, with internet TV, if you've missed a program and you want to watch it, you can click a button, scroll through a list of programs and watch what you missed, or catch up on something you want to catch up on, like this interview, for example. But with the streaming type DVB-H or whichever technology they use, it's simply normal TV. It's streamed, you've got to be there at the right time, catch it at the right time, and it's playing as it plays. There's no interactivity. You can pause it, but you can't really do much beyond a certain small buffer that's built into the device. So the big trend going forward is essentially on-demand TV. Over 60% of TV that's consumed in America right now is consumed on an on-demand basis. In other words, it's streamed over the internet and played when you want to play it. So we're going to be challenged in this country because mobile and fixed internet penetration is far too low to make that a really big thing. But it is something to watch, and it's something that's coming. And mobile TV is somewhere in between. It's old technology, which is streaming, on new platforms, which is digital. So I'm not convinced it's going to be a big player in the media market in South Africa going forward.
Yeah. Kobe, is that something that you'd be rushing for? Prove him wrong?
Look, I think Steven makes some valid points. Firstly, South Africa's got a wide demographic base. Okay, so if we look at the application of the cell phone to that wide demographic base, we immediately saw when cell phones got introduced into South Africa, that suddenly there was a whole market of people that never actually even owned a fixed line telephone and could now actually own a mobile device. And hence we see just a huge amount of business also happening on those devices. The question is, how many of these devices in future, because at the moment you've got few devices that are actually going mobile, you can actually watch mobile TV on, how many of the devices could potentially support this in future? And look, South Africa is a consumer-based market, and you don't actually know how this is going to turn out, which is basically what Steven said at the end of the day. I would probably guess, and I'd take a flyer here to say that there's certain demographic units in South Africa that could potentially make use of mobile television, and there's potentially certain sections that wouldn't make use of it at all. It's also something that potentially goes, for me, hand in hand with an industrialized nation, or potentially something that moves post-industrial. Something that's pre-industrial, hence agricultural, and trying to move it into industrial zone, potentially not going to potentially make use of mobile television as what other countries do. Maybe 20 years off as far, before we start seeing it. That's if Africa starts doing their job properly, and we don't see less, we see less Ivory Coast type examples.
Indeed, indeed. Now let's get a little bit more technical here. Now there's of course the issue of the platforms that are being used. I mean, people are talking about the DMB standard being perhaps the one that's preferred versus the
DVB-H.
H. What difference does that make in terms of trying to get this technology to move on to a wider use?
All these technologies are based on critical mass. So a critical mass of equipment to receive the signal. Now DVB-H is bigger, it's older, it's been around a little longer, and there are potentially more devices currently available on the market to receive it. But they are consumer technology. So if there's a market, you can roll them out. But essentially, technically, from a user point of view, there's no technical difference. You'll still see a program. It's a digital-based streaming system. So I don't think you can read too much into the technology of the broadcast. It will all come down to the cost and the ubiquitousness, if that's a word, of the handheld devices. If you've got a device that can receive it, people will use it. If that device is cheap enough that tons of people can buy it, and the cost of the service is low enough that tons of people can use it, they'll find uses for it. Because it's a nice thing to have. You know, you're sitting waiting for an interview, you catch up on the latest news. However, again, I say that the trend is not towards streamed linear television. It's towards the internet-based on-demand television or on-demand programming, and YouTube is a perfect example of that. I'd rather watch a YouTube clip of something interesting than sit and wait for something to happen on a TV set, no matter how big that TV set is, whether it's as big as your wall or as small. And I mean, more and more that's happening. People are downloading series, watching them on their big TV. Well, they're not really waiting anymore.
I think it might be interesting to find out the numbers from Multichoice, because they've got that video on demand service. I think you on some of their more expensive packages. But what about the regulatory environment? Are we seeing the regulators being supportive of developing this form, or are we seeing, as usual, the spanner in the works coming?
No, I think licenses have been issued. Licenses are available, and people are actually issuing, or like you saw with Multichoice, there are commercial product out there. You can go out right now to Pick and Pay or OK Bazaars or wherever and buy a little goodie and receive the signal. If you've got a Nokia device, you can actually pick up the signal right now in the major metropolitan areas and use it. So there is a commercial product out there, and the regulatory environment has made this possible. The licenses are issued and out there. But I think what is more important is that from a pure consumer and from a regulatory environment, we're seeing that more and more products are being offered to the consumer. Some of them will survive. That's the nature of the market. Some will make it, some won't. But organizations like Multichoice are using these technologies to learn and to discover and to play around almost in a sandbox type environment with new technologies, new methods of delivering content to consumers. And that will probably be quite fundamental going forward.
Yeah, but of course a big fear of the politicians when it comes to things like this is that they lose control, because put TV on your cell phone and suddenly from broadcasting to SABC's 2 million viewers, suddenly you have access to how many telephones are there in South Africa? 50 million viewers.
Well, somewhere around 37 million actual devices. Never mind what the networks tell you about 50 million connections, because I mean there's ostriches in the Free State with cell phones. But it's almost 100%.
Is that a concern? Is that a worry that perhaps the politicians will come in and dump down things a little bit?
No, I don't think that's a real concern at all. The truth is they have such control over the SABC. The vast majority of the people watch television on standard terrestrial broadcast. I think digital TV, normal digital TV broadcast to your home is going to be a bigger deal than mobile TV going forward.